Elon Musk's son asks Trump something that leaves him speechless. That night at Mar-a-Lago, Elon Musk had no idea that his 4-year-old son would alter the course of a conversation between giants, including President Donald Trump. The dinner was understated but surrounded by power, a meeting between two of the most significant figures on the planet and an unexpected guest. XAA2 Musk, or simply X as he was known, sat between the two men with a calm and inquisitive demeanor. His clear eyes held something hard to define. It was as if everything around him intrigued him but also made him anxious. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was softly. Elon rarely brought his son to political events, but that night something in X insisted he wanted to accompany his dad, and Elon, as he often did with the unforeseen, shrugged it off and brought him along. "He likes to listen. Maybe he'll learn something," he commented as he settled him beside him. Trump was unfazed. On the contrary, if he takes after his father, he's already thinking more than half of Congress, he joked amid laughter. They gathered around a sturdy wooden table, surrounded by windows overlooking the sea. A simple dinner without extravagance, featuring hot dishes, crystal glasses, and a conversation that began with the usual topics: elections, the economy, artificial intelligence, and the future of free speech. Elon spoke calmly, articulating ideas about technology and social responsibility. Trump, always direct, questioned intentions, strategies, and power. The two were different but understood one another. Here were two men who had challenged entire systems, each in their own way, each with their victories and scars. And in their midst, a child silently paying attention while the adults discussed the future of civilization. X discreetly drew on the napkin, creating circles that resembled rockets, people, and perhaps planets. But what no one expected was that the center of that conversation would change direction with a question, a small inquiry posed by an even smaller voice, but with the weight of centuries. "President Trump, are you afraid of disappearing?" The words flowed so naturally that for a moment everyone thought they had misheard. Elon halted mid-sentence. Trump stared at the boy, and silence enveloped the room like an unexpected wave, amplifying even the sound of the sea. For a few seconds, it was as if something invisible shattered in the air. It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't an accusation. It was merely a question posed with the raw sincerity of a child who hasn't yet learned to lie, but has already grasped more of the world than most adults ever will. The question shifted everything. Even Trump sensed this. From that moment on, dinner would no longer be political. It would become personal, human, unforgettable. The silence that followed X's question was more eloquent than any speech. "I'm not talking about your title. I'm talking about you, Donald Trump." Accustomed to dominating rooms, cameras, and crowds, now faced a 4-year-old boy with a look that his advisors rarely witnessed. Unarmed, on the other side of the table, he crossed his arms and remained silent. He sensed something significant was happening, something that no meeting, rally, or political agreement could replicate. His son, with that raw innocence that only very observant children possess, had touched a wound that few dared to mention: the fear of disappearing without being understood. Trump responded with a dry laugh, trying to ease the tension. "I was president of the United States. They'll be discussing me for generations." But X continued, "People may remember what you did, but will they remember why you did it?" The question lingered in the air like a dense cloud. Trump looked at Musk, expecting a comment, a laugh, something. But Elon merely observed, as if analyzing the clash between two unexpected forces, a child and an empire. Trump leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming on the table thoughtfully. "You know, kid, it's not just about being remembered. It's about making some noise while you're here." "I made some noise. A lot of noise," X replied without hesitation. "But noise is not the same as meaning." Elon smiled slightly, while Trump frowned. He was facing a boy who didn't ask questions to be cute or to impress. He did it because he sought understanding, and that made him even harder to overlook. Trump leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "And what do you know about meaning at 4 years old?" X rested his small arms on the table. "I know that when my father hugs me, even if he says just a few words, I feel important. That has meaning." The response dismantled any attempt at resistance. Elon looked away. It was discreet but carried a weight, the pain of acknowledging absences that work would never justify. Trump cleared his throat. Not everyone has time for that, kid. The real world demands strength. This struck Elon more than any political attack or negative headline. Those words revealed what no algorithm or rocket could resolve: the emotional absence that success often entails. In silence, dinner continued. But something had shifted. Trump no longer spoke with the same enthusiasm. Musk observed his son more closely than he had in recent months, and X, despite his age, seemed to understand that he had opened an old wound.
For a few minutes, no one spoke. The sound of the sea took center stage. It was as if the house, a symbol of power and prestige, had been overtaken by a rare vulnerability. Then X broke the silence. "I think sometimes the right people do the wrong things because they're afraid of looking small." Trump was silent. Musk lightly bit his lower lip. That was a phrase he could have said about his own life, but he never had the courage to voice it.
The weight of the conversation was no longer about who won more, but rather about what was lost in the process. The dishes grew cold, but no one cared. What they were digesting was larger than the food.
Trump stared at the boy for the first time since the conversation began.
His expression was neither cynical nor defensive. It was vulnerable. "You speak as if you've seen it all before, as if you understand more than you do." X didn't hesitate. "It's just that I listen a lot. The world talks all the time. Adults shout so much that they forget to listen." Trump narrowed his eyes, then let out a muffled laugh.
"You are not an ordinary child, I assure you of that."
Musk, until then silent, finally spoke.
"He asks things I've avoided answering for years."
Trump turned the glass silently, then said, "Did you know that before the presidency, I thought I was invincible? Every building, every negotiation, every headline, everything was control. But being president shows you what you don't control." X leaned slightly. "How will people remember you?" Trump did not respond immediately. He remained silent, then answered without acting, "I don't know anymore." It was at that moment that the change occurred. The man who spent his life claiming he knew everything finally admitted he didn't, and the room felt smaller, less staged, more human. Musk then asked a direct question, which even he wasn't sure if he wanted to hear the answer to. "And do you regret anything?" Trump did not reply. Instead, he gazed out the window at the dark sea. X, with his disconcerting calm, decided to ask what adults avoided.
"Have you ever let someone important go because you were too busy trying to be important?"
The silence cut like a knife. Musk swallowed hard. The question was also for him. He understood. Trump closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, something had changed. The answer was simple and brutal. "What if you had a chance to change that?" X continued, "I don't know if I deserve it." Trump replied for the first time without armor. Musk felt his stomach sink. X had articulated in minutes what he never had the courage to say to his own father, and now here his son made a man used to dominating the world admit that perhaps he hadn't always been a good man. "It's just that sometimes when we fight so hard to be remembered, we forget who is on our side," said X. That was the turning point. It wasn't about politics, not even about fame. It was about people, about presence, about the unseen effects of power.
Trump sat back, staring at the ceiling for a few seconds, then looked at Musk. "Did you know that your son is harder to debate than the entire press?"
Musk
chuckled softly but sincerely.
"I know."
Trump turned his gaze back to X. "And you? What would you do in my place?" The boy responded with a calmness that disarmed them both. "I'd call whoever you kept waiting." Trump did not reply, but something within him had clearly been touched. He turned his face away as if hiding a fragile moment. Musk simply watched, proud not of rockets or Tesla, but of something much rarer, the depth of the sun he was rediscovering that night. The night progressed. The sound of the waves mingled with the silence of thoughts. That dinner was no longer a meeting between titans. It was a mirror. Musk took a deep breath. There was a tension in his chest, a weight he used to ignore with more work, more meetings, more plans. But not there. There he was, emotionally exposed. And for the first time in a long time, he had the courage to look within. "X," he said in a quieter voice than usual, "why might I care about you, right?" The boy just gazed at him serenely. "You love me, Daddy. I know.
but sometimes it feels like you see me as an idea, not a boy."
The phrase struck Musk like lightning. It was true. Trump observed the scene silently, his eyes wandering between father and son. In his own mind, echoes of past mistakes arose. People pushed aside by choices that seemed inevitable at the time but were costly today. "I have kids too," Trump said finally, looking at Elon, "and even though I was at the center of the world, sometimes I felt like I was at the bottom of the sea. They were swimming further away, and I was just standing in the sand." Elon nodded, his eyes beginning to glisten with an emotion he rarely displayed. "We make rockets, but we don't go back in time." Musk stood from his chair, walked over to his son, and knelt beside him. "I'm sorry for not being there, for not seeing, for trying to do everything but the most important thing."
X hugged him without saying a word. Trump looked away for a moment. It seemed he wanted to say something too, but he didn't know how. "And you, President?" X suddenly turned his attention to him. "Have you ever apologized to someone you love?"
Trump hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Not as often as I should."
"There's still time,"
the boy said, smiling.
That smile wasn't just a child's. It was a reminder, a hope, a way out for men who had grown accustomed to winning and forgotten what it was like to simply feel.
The waiter appeared with a tray, breaking the tension with a whisper of formality. Cool drinks.
A new beginning, perhaps. Nobody discussed politics, the market, or algorithms anymore. Now they spoke, even in silence, about what never makes the headlines but truly transforms the world. Affection, listening, humility. They toasted not to power, but to conscience. The toast sealed a new energy in the room. For a moment, it seemed everything was at peace, but X knew, and Elon too, that some questions still lingered.
It wasn't the kind of conversation that concluded with a raised glass. It was a night made for confrontations that could no longer be postponed. Trump sat back, relaxed, but his eyes remained intense, observing every gesture of Musk and the boy. It was quieter than usual, as if waiting for something. It was X who broke the silence. "Wow." Elon immediately turned to him. "What's the biggest mistake you've ever made?" The question fell like a stone on the calm surface of that moment. Musk froze for a second. Trump raised an eyebrow. It was the question every parent dreads hearing, especially a parent who spent more time between rockets and spreadsheets than holding their own child's hand. Musk began, but his voice trailed off. "I think the biggest mistake was believing that being absent was a fair price to pay for a better future." Trump listened intently, not interrupting. X then asked, "And you, Mr. President, what was yours?" Trump was silent for the first time that night. He didn't seem to have a ready answer. He looked at the sea outside, then back at the boy. The usual bravery in his eyes seemed diminished, replaced by something rare, raw honesty. Thinking, I needed to win, even when it cost the right people. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was reverent.
Musk took a deep breath, as if he had released a ton off his chest. Trump gazed at the glass, but he saw far beyond it. "But regret doesn't change anything if we don't change too, right?" X said calmly. Musk nodded. Trump still seemed to be digesting the emotions. Then came the final question, the one no one expected, the one that would define everything. "Are you afraid of being forgotten?" Musk looked at his son. Trump looked at Musk. And then, with the frankness of someone who no longer needs to pretend, Musk replied, "Yes, but not for the world. For what you will remember of me." Trump took a deep breath. "You know what scares me?" he said. "Let them remember me for the fights, but forget the reason." X crossed his arms, thoughtful, and then, as if he had already contemplated it for weeks, he replied, "Maybe you're asking the wrong question." Trump leaned forward. "Which one would be right then?" X looked at him. "Instead of asking if the world will remember you, why don't you ask if the people you love will remember what matters?" Trump was silent. Musk lowered his eyes. The answer struck like lightning, and it was then that X said in a firm but gentle voice the sentence that would conclude that night with the force of a revelation. "Because it's not the world that matters. It's who's by your side when this is all over, the people who truly know you. If they remember you with love, that's enough." Trump was unable to respond. He just looked at the boy with a gaze that mixed respect, shock, and gratitude. Musk smiled, but his eyes were moist. To be remembered, yes, but for the love that is built, not for the power that is conquered.
And the 4-year-old boy had won the game he didn't even know he was playing.
Dinner concluded in silence. But it wasn't the awkward silence of someone unsure of what to say. It was the silence of someone who finally understood what they needed to hear. Musk, in turn, gazed at his son as if he were witnessing something sacred, not a genius in the making, not a symbol of heritage, but an honest mirror reflecting without filters everything that truly mattered. "I guess I never thought of it that way," Trump said after a few minutes, his voice quieter than usual. "Most people don't," Musk replied calmly. "We live as if everything were eternal, but what really remains are the memories that others keep of us." Trump chuckled lightly. "Generally, they're not the ones we put in the headlines." Trump looked at both of them, then took out his cell phone, typed something quickly, and placed the device on the table. "Message to my daughter, just to talk." Musk smiled. "Good move." Trump sighed. "I'm not used to losing to kids." The atmosphere felt different, as if the air had changed density. Hardness had given way to humanity. Competition had transformed into connection, and pride had shifted to shared vulnerability. As the team collected dishes and organized the room, Trump stood up and walked to the window. He remained there for a few seconds, gazing at the sea. Then, with the sincerity of someone who no longer needs to prove anything, he said,
"I always fought to be heard, but maybe I never really listened."
Elon stood up too, his son already asleep in his arms.
"There's still time," he replied. Trump turned, and for a moment he appeared to be a different man. Musk thought tonight would be about strategy, politics, and the future. It was Elon who said, looking at his son, "The real future was here all along." Trump stepped toward them, extended his hand, and with a firm shake said, "You are creating something more important than any rocket."
"I'm trying," Elon replied, "but he teaches me more than I teach him."
Trump looked at X, now sound asleep, and then something rare occurred. Donald Trump smiled with his eyes.
As Musk walked outside with his son in his arms, the night breeze enveloped them. The sound of the waves now resonated differently, like nature's applause for a spectacle that no one had paid to witness, but that everyone needed to see. Months passed since that night at Mar-a-Lago. The press never knew precisely what was discussed at that dinner. No tweets emerged, no photos leaked, and no advisor gave an interview. Yet somehow, the world realized that something had changed. Trump appeared more subdued, Musk more present, and X kept asking difficult questions.
"Now I want to hear from you. What have you been doing today that truly matters tomorrow?" If this story touched your heart, share and subscribe, because sometimes a child's question can change everything.